Hi guys, I'm reviewing an old tank today. This one's the Jagdpanzer E-100 German tier 10 tank destroyer. This is my most played tier 10 because I'm a madman. It's also the one I've probably bought and sold the most. This is probably my 8th time owning this tank, maybe my 7th. I'll go through why a little later in the video. And I'll go through its strengths and weaknesses. I'm going to go through some of the weaknesses first. One is that this thing is really slow and it's got crap gun depression. What that means is you can't take it to parts of the map you'd normally like to go. On Abbey, on Encounter, I do not like going down the one line. I prefer to go to the middle or go towards the cap, because I'm always wary that red team might speed rush the cap, and if 5 or 6 of them decide to go park on there and I'm sat down in the one line, I can't do bugger all to stop them. So I don't like going this way, but I have to, really. They've got some fast tanks, and if they were to get up to the middle while I was crossing open ground, I'd be dead. So not only is the speed a downside of this tank, the fact it limits where you can go on the map is also a downside. Another factor, as you can see there, the gun traverse is very narrow. You can't side scrape and shoot enemies with this tank. If you can side scrape to block an enemy shot, but then you've got to pull out, swing the front end of the tank around to fire, by which time they've moved, because no one wants to get hit by this gun. Other downsides to it are that it's got a hefty reload, even with a rammer, vents, chocolate, all that lot, covering arms and stuff. It's about 18-19 seconds at best. It might even be more than that, to be fair. So you've got a hefty reload. That, and then shell drops, so when firing at range you have to aim a little bit higher than you normally would to account for it. On some good sides, the aiming time and the base accuracy stats are pretty good, and it hits like a freight train. You're looking at a 299mm of pen on your AP shell, 420 on your heat shell, which is just insane. In your HE shell, while the pen isn't anything outstanding, if you do manage to pen something like a waffle with it, you're going to hit them for about 1700 damage. As we've just seen from those last 2 shots, when this gun hits, you're going to be taking a large chunk of health off pretty much anything in front of you. One of the upsides of this tank, other than the staggering alpha damage, is that it doesn't care really what it's shooting at, because, well, you're going to pen it. If you hit it, that is. This gun does have a tendency to just troll the hell out of you. You'll have shots that'll just hit the dirt, or they'll just damage an enemy track and won't even break it. So whilst it's got good accuracy stats, the gun is a troll, and that's something else that needs bearing in mind. The armor's not so bad, but premium shells can negate it. It's better than most tier 10 TDs, other than things like the E3. But there is a cupola on top that people can use against you. Another downside of the tank, as well as it being slow, is that it's just huge, and because it's so long and it's got such limited gun traverse, it means that allies will get in your way a lot, because I guess they don't realise, like this one's here. I'm trying to get round to help take out the Super Conqueror, but I've got to expose my side to the Super Conqueror to do so, because the allies tank is in the way, and I just can't rotate the tank, so I have to overexpose to take the shot. And that's something that you'll see happening a lot if you own this tank. But you can't go off on your own, because the reload and the mobility, due to it being, both of those being that bad, means that when it's on its own, this tank is easy prey, so you have to stay near allies, but then those allies are going to be getting in your way a lot. So you can't really win, unfortunately. That, and the fact that you'll have games where this gun just will not work, are the reasons I've bought and sold this thing so many times. I've sold it due to those reasons. We'll see again here in a second. I have to hold fire for a minute and be careful not to hit my allies, because they're driving around like mad in front of this waffle. And if I hit one of them, then I've wasted the shell and I've got to sit around for another 20 seconds. Thankfully, it doesn't hit any of the allies. I managed to land the shot. The devastating firepower of the cannon is why I keep buying this tank back. I sell it because it's frustrating to use, and then I miss smacking people straight through the thickest part of their armour for 1000 damage, and then I buy it back. And this cycle has been repeating for the 5 or 6 years I've been playing the game. Here's another example of the mobility being a bit of a pain. I want to go up there toward their base. Well, it's not the base in this version of the game, but you know. The reason for that is because there's more damage over there. However, there's a heavy tank down here on the left, and if I try going up the ramp, this heavy tank, it's a 705, is going to be shooting me. And if he's fully upgraded, I do not want him shooting. Well, I don't want him shooting me either way, but if he's fully upgraded, it's going to hurt. Our allies are focusing on the reds around where their base would normally be, around their spawn point. So I'm thinking I can go after this guy. There's plenty of green tanks there. At this point, I'm thinking we've got to win. There's one red tank in the centre high up who's being challenged by 2 tanks. They've got 1 tank who's near the cap. They've got some on the river who are being pushed back, and we've got multiple TDs with a line of fire on the ones on the river and the ones who are near their base. So even though I'm not in a good position here, I figured not doing so bad. Took out the heavy tank there. I could go for the heavy tank on the base. However, I noticed that the mediums on the right hand side and the second are visible to me. And I'm still safe from a one on the base even though it's trying to cap. So I'm going to try shooting the mediums for now. I don't blame him for capping, it's what I would have done in this situation, because right now it looks like they're going to lose. And I was wary about the 4202 and the Soviet heavy capping, which is another reason I've headed this way, so I could prevent that if need be. Put a nasty shot into the T-28 prototype there. The reason I fired at him and not the Object 140 was because the Object 140 was moving around a lot. I had a shot, but it wasn't a decent one. The T-28 prototype was sitting still. And with the reload being as long as it is on this, you want to guarantee that you get your shot to pen. And if that means shooting a tier 8 over a tier 10, then that's just what you're going to have to do. I fired a heat shot there because I've run out of AP. It bounced off the front of the T-28 prototype. God's bloody law. It hit this tiny little auto bounce angle on the front of its hull, which was frustrating, I'm not going to lie. In general, the heat shells, despite having insane penetration, they tend to let me down on this tank. They seem to just zoom in on the other tanks' tracks and things like that, so I do prefer the AP shells. But having some heat, so it is handy, especially if you want to pen the front of a T-30 turret, for instance. Things like that can be amusing. Or if you want to pen the front of an IS-7's turret. The heat shell on this can do that if you aim near the gun. Here, I figured their mediums have still got green tanks applying pressure on them, so I'm going to take this guy out so he can't cap. Problem, however, is I'm on my own. He should have pushed out there to circle around me. The Soviet player put a shell into my track, but the green tanks nearby seem to get the Soviet heavy's attention instead. Made another mistake here. As well as coming here alone, I didn't factor in the poor gun depression, and I can't actually get a decent shot on the Soviet tank. I couldn't afford it bouncing. Thankfully, they don't manage to actually circle me, so I put a shell into them, but the tanks down by the river are now shooting me. The green tanks that went there didn't succeed, and the game ends up being a loss. Things like that are another reason why I saw this. I've had 9.5k damage games in this tank and still lost, which is infuriating. The reason for it is because of how slow it is and the bad gun depression and all that. It means that while you can do a lot of damage on this tank, a lot of the time the damage isn't being done where it's needed to be done. You'll just be shooting. Well, tanks often aren't really much of a threat on the red team. The decent players will know how dangerous this thing is. They'll know where it can't go and they'll avoid it. So you can do 7k damage, but if it's 7k damage against players on the red team who aren't really, gonna do much damage to the green team anyway, then it doesn't really matter. It's kind of pointless damage. Here's the gun stats. As you can see, on paper they're pretty good, but this gun is a troll. I can't emphasize that enough. It's really satisfying when it hits, but playing this TD, it's feast or famine. You're going to do 1 or 2k damage, or you're going to do 8k damage. More often than not, you're going to do 1 or 2k damage. Bring up the armor for you. It looks pretty solid there, and it's not so bad. I do get a fair few bounces with it, but the angle on the front of the casemate, it isn't so great. So when people start firing the premium shells, it's just going to cut straight through. Unless they hit this. If you're fighting this thing, don't shoot that square part there, because then you're going to struggle to pen. But yeah, most tanks will just load up premium shells and fire straight through the front of the turret face there. Or they'll hit the bowler thing on top, the little machine gun hatch. The frontal plate, thankfully, is pretty solid. But yeah, it looks the armor looks a lot better in the garage than it kind of is in game. Once people bring those premium shells into play, your armor's not worth much at all. So you want to shoot and then try and get back in cover. You do not want to stay exposed in this, because you'll be a priority for people to take out. Overall, I find this tank frustrating to use. You'll have games where it works and games where it will just defy all reason in exactly how much it will fail you. Is it worth the grind? I'd still say yeah, the grind is an absolute pleasure up to this tank, but this is a novelty tier 10. It's not one that anyone with any sanity will play a lot. Cheers for watching, guys.